A quick little diatribe on wine in general and the wines that we have here tonight. First of all, it should be acknowledged that really the story of wine is the story of human civilization, and that is not hyperbole at all. For thousands of years, it was safer to drink wine than water, particularly as people started to become agrarian communities and cities started becoming founded. We didn't exactly have sewage systems 3,000 years ago, so it literally was, and there were no screens. So there was not so much sanitation. So the thing that kept people alive was beer and wine through antibacterial capabilities. No, this is true.
Love it.
In fact, at a genetic level, the most recent research has come out that our early ancestors, at some point about 10 million years ago, I'm trying not to be controversial, but at 10 million years ago, our ancestors developed the capability to process alcohol. And that's actually allegedly one of the reasons why we might have gotten out of the trees down to get fruit in the ground that had rotted. Alcohol is human civilization, believe it or not. Fast forward to 7,000 years later, and here we are. And there's a couple things I like to tell people about wine when it comes to wine. Number one, wine and how wine tastes is all personal. It's all subjective. It's all about you. It's not about anybody else in the room. And the reason for that is we all grew up with different foods. My grandmother cooked different food than your grandmother, and etc. And we grew up in different parts of the country and different parts of the world. So we have different flavors built into our brain. So we taste different things. All that matters is if you like a wine or not. From there on, try to figure out why you like a wine and why you don't, and use whatever vocabulary makes you comfortable to do so. I don't typically describe wine in I get strawberries, berries, coffee, toffee. I can do that, I don't necessarily do that. I describe wine more in textures, how it goes across my palate. Is it smooth, is it rough, is it lush, is it thin? Some people describe it in books. Some people describe it, this is Anne Hathaway walking down the staircase to the Golden Globes. You kind of get an idea of what that wine would look like in a way. Very elegant, precise, what have you. So whatever vocabulary you use to make you feel comfortable, it's all about how you're experiencing wine. And it doesn't matter if it's a $200 bottle or a $5 bottle of wine. All that matters is if you like it. So getting into why wines cost what they do, farming is really, really hard work at the end of the day. It really is. And where you farm, and certain plots are harder than others, and the land costs more. At the end of the day, it all goes down to real estate. Why does gas cost more in California? It's not just the taxes. It's the fact that it costs more to buy oceanfront property than it does to buy Iowa cornfield property. And that's why gas is regionally different. That's why real estate is regionally different. The same thing with wine. Napa Valley is some of the most expensive dirt in the world. Oregon's getting up there. When you have a mortgage of $400,000 an acre, you got to charge more than $5 a bottle. It's just simple math. So what we have here tonight, you already had the first two whites, and we talked real quickly about it. Getting into the red wine, the first red was Archery Summit out of Willamette Valley, Oregon. Founded in 1993. Willamette Valley is a very unique place for Pinot Noir. One of the primary reasons for that is it is at the 44th parallel. That's the same parallel as Burgundy, where Pinot Noir's ancestral home is. One of the other aspects about Willamette Valley is it's nestled in between two mountain ranges. You have the coastal range, which captures a lot of the rain, because there's what's called the orographic effect. Clouds, as they're warmer, can absorb more moisture. As a cloud moves up a mountain range, it drops this moisture because it gets colder in the air up there. And that's why the west side of a mountain range will almost always be more green and lush than the east side of a mountain range. So Willamette Valley has a coastal mountain range that captures most of the rain, but there's still just enough rain for the Pinot Noir, which is a real pain in the ass to grow. Pinot Noir is a horrible, difficult, finicky grape to grow. But when grown well and grown right, it can be a luscious, beautiful, mind-blowing wine. So this is a vineyard. This is actually a cross-section of 6 of our state vineyards, 5 in Dundee, 1 in the Ribbon Ridge. So it's widely considered one of the top Oregon Pinot Noir producers, usually considered in the top 5. Moving into Zinfandel. Seghesio is synonymous with Zinfandel at this point in our sort of wine world, in the sense that it was founded in 1895. So celebrating their 121st year of making wine, they figured it out a couple things over 4 or 5 generations of growing. The Seghesio style is very pure, bright aromatics. There's none of that prune or raisins, which might be fine if you like that wine. There's nothing against that, but it's not necessarily indicative of the varietal. Those are farming choices. Seghesio hasn't scored for accolades, hasn't scored below 90 points in 7 years. It's been on Wine Inspector Top 100 6 times. For a wine that costs about $24, that's where you get into a little bit of a value. The average vine age in the Seghesio is 30 years old. That's coming from a cross-section of all 300 of our estate farm vineyards. The next wine we're going to have is the Seghesio Old Vine Zinfandel. The reason old vine means something is as a vine ages, it produces less fruit per vine, but the fruit it does produce is much more concentrated, much more complex, and just significantly better. So the old vine Zinfandel is coming from our top 5 vineyards. The youngest vine in this is 50 years old. The average vine is 65-year-old vines. And then finishing up in our newest property, our newest project in the Horse Heaven Hills of Washington. So back up in the northwest, this is the Double Canyon. It's an estate farm vineyard in the Horse Heaven Hills appellation. What makes this area unique is perfect for Bordelais varietals because a couple things. Number one, those 2 mountain ranges I talked about capture almost all the rain, so there's very little rain over here. For Cabernet, that's great. It's only 6 to 10 inches of rain per year. There's a constant wind that goes across the landscape, so there's no issues with rot at all. And then lastly, the farther north you go up, in the winter, it's dark for a lot longer, but in the summer, it's lighter for a lot longer. So they get about 2 extra sunlight hours per day versus, say, California. So it's just a beautiful place to grow, great quality Cabernet. Again, nice little wines. Usually about $24 retail, and it's scored 91 points the last 2 years. Points are just, again, it's just to kind of give you a barometer. I've had wines that were rated 73 points and they were outstanding, and I've had wines that for me were 96 points and they were a ripoff. It's all about personal preference. I won't take offense to any of your thoughts on these wines because I didn't make any of them. So, pleased with that. You can see you can get a $12 bottle of wine that's really good, and typically you can get up the scale, you can get even better fruit. It just depends on what you personally like. At the end of the day, to a certain extent, you do pay for quality because quality takes a lot more hand craftsmanship. So with that, thank you so much for coming. It's a pleasure to have you here. And Stacy's going to talk some notes on why you're here.